Hey everyone, welcome to our first behind the scenes video. This time we'll be covering the low poly Captain Toad treasure tracker inspired environment I did a couple of weeks ago, as a lot of you requested a behind the scenes, and if this does well, I'll do more behind the scenes on my speed environment videos and also my games. When I start my environments, I like to make chunks of the level and add little details as I go. If you notice someone doing a painting or a drawing, generally you do the overall composition. You might add small details here and there. If you focus on one area for too long, it'll become too detailed, and you could you could have in the anatomy disproportioned sections. So you might draw the head a bit too big or the shoulder because you're not seeing the overall image. And that can happen when you're doing game environments or anything that requires a good composition and further details. So I like to do chunks of composition, and then I'll add in small bits of detail, and that's so I know what ideas I previously had. When you're going along with the environment, it's easy to forget what details you're going to put in. So at this stage, I've got some flowers at the start, a bit of grass, and you'll notice you ascend, you go to the pillars, the trees, and that statue. Now these areas aren't fully detailed, it's just so I have an idea of later on what I'm going to do. And another thing I like to do is add bits of story in the environment, which is what I'm doing here with the tent. So you can imagine a character, an NPC, living in this tent. He's got the two stumps that he can sit on, maybe with a friend. He or she can sit on. You've got the fireplace there. Sorry, the campfire, and they can like roast marshmallows, whatever they eat. You can come up with little stories, which is really fun. It's something Dark Souls does really well. And here, I'm going back, adding a few more details, and I'm adding in some water now. The fun thing of working with an asset pack is that you have strict limitations. So you get these assets and you figure out what can I do with them. So you have to be really creative with them. In this case, those blocks, I knew I wanted them to move left and right, kind of like a Mario hazard. And here I'm developing the upper section. Now, I don't always have a clear idea of what I'm doing beforehand. A lot of this is just improvised and being creative on the go and using common tropes I've seen in images, in games, things I've done before, and what makes sense to me. So like a pathway like that, you've seen that 100 times in a game. You've seen sections where you can descend, ascend. You've seen sections where they'll have a behind bit like this, where I'm placing this mushroom, and they'll put a star there or something. So a lot of what I'm doing is just inspired by other things. I'm just making it my own. Here I'm making the very end. I knew I wanted the objective to be on top of this mountain piece, as from a distance you can see it. You can see it at the very start, I was thinking. So whatever would be on top of that, you'd be able to see at the very start of the level. I've got those stones there again, just for hazards. Obviously, if this was like a proper game level, I might have some more hazards. Or I would potentially have an enemy. And what I was thinking is at those statues, I would have an enemy walking around it, much like Captain Treasure Toad. Here I just added some coins in for fun, and the stars. Once again, this is purely because it's not going out, it's not a free game, it's not a commercial game. This was just for fun. Do not use these assets because they are Nintendo's, obviously. And you can see I put that star at the top there that the player can see at the very start of the map, and with bloom and a bit of a mission on the star, it really stands out, and you can see it like in the end product, you'll see it rotating. The coins obviously will rotate, and I've got coins around the statue at the start. And what I was thinking there is, if you want to be an adventurous player and the enemy's going around it, you can try and get those stars. And if you get caught, well, obviously you lose. But if you manage to get the stars and not caught, you get a great rush, and then you can slide down to the bottom level near the tent. I thought that was pretty cool. So let me just reiterate on a few things I've mentioned. At the start, I have a reference image to my very right that I'm looking at. Oh, multiple references. We call these like mood boards. And this was a environment mood board. You can have character mood boards, stuff like that. And it's just a bunch of images that I'm using as a strong reference for my environment. Usually I would do this in Photoshop, but because these aren't like super professional environments, I just have a few Google images on the side in different tabs that I can look through. And they give me a lot of ideas. Now, the important thing is not to just copy the ideas, but it's to make it your own. So if you see something done really well, try and improve on it, innovate on it, invert it, do it in a way differently, basically. And the general structure of this level came from playing levels. So this would be very much so, no, it wouldn't be stage 1 because there's quite a few hazards, especially for a Nintendo game. It would be more of a stage 2 type level where, or it could potentially be stage 1 if those blocks didn't move too fast. But this would definitely be a stage 1 or stage 2 type level. This wouldn't be like a stage 3 or 4. This level would have a maximum of 2 enemies. I would probably say it would have 1 to introduce it. You could have it at the very start. Something would probably be smarter is to have it near the end, so the player has gotten more used to the controls. And one other thing to point out with this environment, I made this a lot more like a game. So if you watch some of my other level design videos, they aren't level design as such. They are much more just making a really nice composition, slapping some post-processing on top, and calling it a day. This is much more of a level. And there are a few other points I want to point out. So as I mentioned at the start, mood board, reference images, whatever you want to do, have reference images. Secondly, develop the composition, add small details as you go. So you start, we call it a block out at the start, which is where we get our gray box usually, but in this case I got assets. So I'm blocking it out with assets, and I'm putting a little bit of detail as I go. After that, I do more of a detail pass where I'll actually put a ton of objects down. And then I'll usually go into a polish pass, which is my post-processing. So you can just call it post. This is the pipeline, by the way, for these type of environments, not for a proper game. And what I mean by proper is something where I'm not just using pre-made assets. Something, if I was making the assets or someone else, it's a completely different pipeline, which I'll talk about in my next video. But in terms of just speed level design, inspiration, the scene composition, block in all the detail, do a post-processing pass, and you're pretty much done. It's really simple. You can do it in an hour. If you're not super quick at it, it might take 2 hours. This takes a bit more time because it is a structure of a level. Most of the videos you'll see on YouTube are just a camera angle, and I've done this before, just a camera angle, a really good shot of the scene, and they've dressed it up around the camera. Whereas a level for a game, it needs to look good from multiple angles, especially a game like this where you have to rotate the camera and see different perspectives. If it's a game where you only have one perspective, it's very different. You can dress up the scene very differently. The way you dress up a game like Super Mario World, where it's a camera around you, or Zelda, versus something like Diablo is completely different because of your perspective. I was really happy with the final post-processing pass here. I feel like I got the lighting really well. There is bloom, it's just really subtle. Of course, a form of tone mapping, but trying to not make it all washed out, trying to keep the color there, because these environments, you want them to be colorful. They're meant to be colorful. And people always wonder this. I just like putting the particles in, to be honest. It's nothing that you have to do. It probably doesn't make it look much better. It's just something I like to do. It's like, I don't know, my signature, if you want to call it that. And the other major ingredient to speed level design videos, or any game environment in general, is having great assets that are cohesive, that work together. If you watch Jim Sterling, you know of common asset flippers. Don't do that. I'm assuming if you're making a game and you're an indie developer, you're probably going to be using your own assets. Keep in mind, I only use these assets for these types of videos. If I was to make a game using this, I wouldn't put it on Steam. I'd probably do a mobile app and I would still have my own assets on top of these assets here, like the trees and the ground and stuff. I'll definitely have my own assets on top of this. At the very least, if you do just use the assets as given, be really creative with it. Like, the environment you see here, I've done a ton of work to try and be creative with it. It's not just a blatant flip. There's been design and thought. The reason why I believe a lot of the asset flips here's a few reasons why a lot of the asset flips are just completely ridiculed, and for good reason, in my opinion. One, the person hasn't put a lot of thought into the design of the environment in the first place. So I've seen a bunch of asset flips which are just like, okay, I got this pack, it's sci-fi, so my game's sci-fi now. Well, first of all, it's not the place you come from. You come from maybe a design document where you've actually written out, okay, this environment is going to be a colorful environment set in a world where there's floating little dioramas, and it's not super realistic, but it uses gravity, it uses the way Earth works in terms of gameplay. The first 10 levels are going to be a forest set, second set of levels will be a volcano type level, but they all have to be cartoony looking assets rendered in a certain type of lighting, and you get where I'm going with this. Someone who actually put thought, you couldn't really tell if it was an asset flip. So if someone looked at this, they wouldn't assume that I just used an asset pack, because there's a reason for everything in the environment. Things are put in certain places. I don't have like a futuristic building. I don't have a Fallout 4 type building plopped in the middle of this because that's what's cool. Everything makes sense in its place. So if you're just a programmer, because I've been getting a few comments and questions, if you're just a programmer and you have no artist and you really want to make a game and you don't have the money to hire an artist, but you have enough money for maybe a few packs on the asset store or something, first recommendation, you probably won't like it, try and do something way simpler that maybe you can pull off, like a really simple low poly style. Second suggestion, if you really want to use assets, have strong design reasons behind it, and only use them if all the assets are cohesive. And please try and edit them a little bit, much like a modder. You'll notice modders are highly respected. They're using game engine assets, but they usually reskin quite a lot of them, and they do interesting things with them that no one's done before. If you get an asset pack and you just plop in the exact scene that the developer made, then of course no one's going to like what you've done, because they've already seen that, and you're meant to be creative and original with it. It's a pretty delicate topic, and these speed level designs are just that, speed level designs for you guys to enjoy, watch, and hopefully get something out of. So would I use these in a game for Steam? I personally wouldn't, but once again, I'm lucky enough to have experience in Maya, and I can make my own assets, so I can use Maya and Substance, whereas a lot of people might not have learnt that skill, especially solo programmers, which in the case you might want to use assets. In the worst case where you do have to use assets, make it good, do something well with them, show it to friends, make something really cohesive, something that makes sense, something that looks really well put together, and show it to people before you just chuck it on Greenlight, which will soon be gone, but show it to people, see if it makes sense, if it's cohesive, if it just looks like it's poorly slapped together. Chances are, if you spent a lot of hours designing the environment, carefully picking the assets, carefully playing the demos, making sure things work together, they all have the same consistent texture quality, they all have the same look and feel, and you can create the same type of atmospheres using these assets, chances are people aren't just going to slam you straight up. Especially if you are 100% transparent with what you've done. At the end of the day, people want to play a really good game. if you are purely a programmer and you did use asset packs in an amazing way, like say you made something like Journey with asset packs, but no one could really tell that you used asset packs, be transparent, because people will be understanding, and you might be able to shift the mindset, and hopefully you'll be able to shift the mindset of those people that are like paying $100 to get on Greenlight, paying, I don't know, $300 for assets and just slapping them all together. I don't know. Try to find a positive in the negatives, I guess. So this has been a bit more than just a behind the scenes on this environment. You can tell I've been doing a ton of research on asset flipping, and it's just an interesting topic for me. Personally, it doesn't affect me much because, as I mentioned for my games, my upcoming game, I'm developing all my own assets. But I guess for people who don't have the ability to do it, they don't have the money to hire an artist, because buying assets and hiring an artist are two different things, then maybe there's an option there for you. But as I mentioned, try and do a few of those steps where you have a really strong vision of what you want the game to look like. You have very cohesive assets. I think you can make it quite positive. The best thing though, try and modify them. Like if you get a human, don't just throw that into the game. Say you get a human warrior and you're starting to learn Blender. Blender's free, so I'll use Blender as an example. Now, it's pre-rigged, right? So you probably don't want to mess around with the mesh too much, but you can change texture detail. You can model additional add-ons which won't take you much time. So let's say it came with an armor set on top of it, which is a child of the spine. You could probably modify that, because it's not, once again, it's not skinned to the rig. It's just a child. It's just sitting there. It's not skinned. So you could probably modify that and make your own armor set out of it. You could change the textures of the character. You could make it in a way where people don't realize that you are using a pre-bought asset because you took the time to modify it, much like modders do, and it's way more respectable. And I think that's what people ideally should be doing with the Unity Asset Store. Treat it like mods. I think it's a really positive mindset. Treat it like you're making original game and you got these assets. Treat it like you're modding. Don't treat it like these other people who are just straight out taking assets, flipping them, making horrible games. Because these people, even if you have great intentions, you are already losing the battle. You're in an uphill battle because everyone already has a view on this. And even if you had the best intentions possible, no one knows unless you're transparent about it. Anyway, bit of a rant there. Hopefully this video was somewhat informative. I guess this is more of a my thoughts plus a behind the scenes type of video. But next time I make one of these, I'll probably just make it purely about behind the scenes, and then I'll make another video on my thoughts about, whatever topic was brought up. In this case, it was Greenlight. I just kind of felt like talking about that because it's been a topic I've been following for a while. I've had a lot of thoughts about it, and I guess the thoughts just came out while I was going over this video. Anyway, I hope this was useful, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.